a huge percentage of log data never gets analyzed, and that's a missed opportunity. In today's world of complex distributed systems, unstructured logs hold hidden insights that could be the key to faster resolution, better security, and smarter automation. Welcome to Data Driven. I am Swapnil Bhartiya, and today we are talking about how teams can unlock the hidden value inside their unstructured log data. To deep dive into this topic, we have with us Bill Peterson, Senior Director of Product Marketing at Sumo Logic, to explore why so much observability data goes unused, how AI and detection as code are reshaping incident response, and what SREs and DevOps leaders should prioritize as they rethink their data strategies. Bill, welcome to the show.
Swapnil, thank you very much for having me.
It is my pleasure, and of course, everybody knows about Sumo Logic. So I'm not going to ask you about Sumo Logic, but what I'm going to ask is that the problem area, the state, the fact is that a large percentage of log data often goes unused. Why you think is that? Though the fact is that organizations, they do put a lot of effort in collecting that data. They do see that a lot of value will come out. But why is that? And what are some of the common barriers that keeps teams from getting real value out of this unused log data?
The very first thing that comes to mind for me is two things: volume and complexity. I think the volume and complexity of the amount of data, amount of logs, even metrics and traces, to be honest, that are coming in, upwards of terabytes a day for a large application, makes it really difficult to know where to start. Traditional tools can't handle that and can't scale effectively. And the data itself is oftentimes unstructured and structured or semi-structured or different formats or different schemas. So it's really hard to handle the volume and the complexity of the data, number one. Number two, kind of plays right into that one, is I think there's a lack of standardization that compounds the problem, right? Because if you think about different teams or applications or vendors creating their own logging standards, and whether those are structured or unstructured, and adding to the problem, really, right? An additive problem. It compounds that volume and complexity problem. And then I'll give you one more, just because I'm a marketer, right? We have to do things in three. I think the cultural aspect, right? There's still, in some organizations, security folks don't speak to DevOps folks. Security folks are concerned about their own logging. DevOps folks are concerned about their own logging. You really need a platform that can handle all of that to really make sure that all of the data, as you said, gets used efficiently. So I think that's what the problem is.
And can you also talk about what is the role, or how does unstructured log data fit into the modern SRE strategy, and why it is becoming so critical in the current observability landscape?
Yeah, so I think it's a contextual opportunity, is what I'll call it. If you think about logs as the contextual backbone of an SRE strategy, right? Metrics, traces as well. Sure, let's talk about those as well. But metrics and traces tell you kind of what happened or show you where you were at a moment in time. Unstructured logs, or logs in general, give you the why and the how. So what does that allow you to do from a strategy point of view? It allows you to implement a real-time incident investigation process, right? So rather than just getting an alert that says, oh, CPU is high. Okay, great, thanks. How about some context to that? So I know, or the folks that are involved in an incident know what it really means. Like, is this a single problem, or is this an endemic problem that's going to go across my entire organization? And then I think the other thing is pattern detection, or behavioral pattern detection. I think SREs really need to start to pay attention to that, right? Because the way I think about this is there's three things here at play. There's compute, there's people, and there's time. And when I say compute, I mean logs, and other mechanisms like metrics and traces, but logs in particular, volume keeps going up. People, the amount of people involved in an incident goes up, but time doesn't change for us. Time remains the same, right? We're not getting more of that. So you're getting more logs, more people in a war room pointing fingers at each other, but you don't get more time. So I think if you can use logs to contextualize the problem, get faster to MTTR to zero, and discover patterns from that, so you can do things like playbooks and automation to get ahead of it, you're kind of inching forward, right?
No, I would also like to talk about your advice on how teams should strategize. But before that, let's also talk about AI, which is the biggest elephant in the room,
Yeah.
and the elephant is not leaving the room anytime soon. When you look at AI, and we are hearing a lot about detection as code, it is starting to play
Hmm.
a bigger role in incident
Sure.
response. Can you walk us through how that works, and if possible, give some real world examples?
What all of this is bringing us towards is more predictive and programmatic incident management rather than just reactive. And what's happening here, detection as code is a great example, is organizations are seeing the benefits of being able to do predictive and programmatic incident management and not reactive, and saying, okay, how can we replicate that? Again, it's a scale, it's a compute people time problem, right? How can we scale that? And one of the ways you can scale that is to use something like detection as code, which can take rules or dashboards or runbooks or playbooks and post them as versioned testable code so that your engineers can see it in Git, or they can deploy it through whatever CI/CD pipeline they're using, and it becomes part of their environment, however they're deploying and however they're managing their own work. Incident management just becomes part of that because you're talking their language. You're using the tools that they use. So that's one. And then for AI in general, it's it's a long conversation, but let me focus kind of in the incident response kind of world. Anomaly detection, right? So let's kind of leverage that off of detection as code. Detection as code is using the tools that the engineers use. What happens when there's an anomaly, right? And that's where AI can come in, and machine learning models can look at those behaviors and look at the repositories and look at the normal actions and raise a flag. And I mentioned earlier, beyond, CPU is high, right? It can go beyond that and look at patterns and tell you that there's an anomaly that happened. And then to your point on how does the rubber meet the road, so to speak? We have customers that have reduced false positives by, I don't have them off the top of my head, but large percentages, 50 to 60%, through using AI contextual learning and understanding. And then on the predictive side, we regularly see customers go from, MTTR 8 hours, you know, maybe have that. And the goal is MTTR to zero. Nobody's done that just yet, but that's where this is going, right? So I think detection as code, AI anomaly detection, all leading to faster incident response.
You have been in this space, observability space, for a while. Uh, Talk about how you have seen the role of log analysis evolve over the years, and based on your own experience, because the fun thing being a journalist in this space is that so much innovation is happening. So even it keeps, first of all, it keeps us fresh. We don't get burned out, but it also keeps us on our toes. We have to just keep ourselves educated also. So talk about what you have seen and how your whole career, it has evolved over time.
Are you commenting on my gray hair,
I
Swapnil?
can't, I can't, thought can't.
So I love this subject because I have been doing this for a long time, and it really went from what happened. So in the room, everybody sits around and says what happens, and everybody points to each other and says, "Not my problem. That's your problem," or "That's his team," or "That's her team." Uh, then we got past that, thankfully, and we got to the why it happened. Okay, we've accepted something happened and it was bad and it's somebody's fault. But why did it happen? I shouldn't say fault, but you know what I mean. And now we're at the what will happen point, right? So that predictive I was talking about before. And I think that's what we're kind of getting to, right? And automation and playbooks are the entree point, in my opinion, to the what will happen. I think AI is going to bolster that over time and kind of enable us to look predictively and be able to raise that flag. And instead of saying CPU is high, say something like, hey guys, you're about to lose 1,000 servers in 7 minutes if you don't push this now. Something along those lines. And I think that's kind of where we are. And I think the other thing that's really helped with all of that is the whole shift left movement has really made observability in general a shared responsibility rather than what I talked about earlier, where you've got the SecOps team and the DevOps team, pointing away from each other almost. Now it's an embracing because everybody's seeing the benefit of, okay, if I can get MTTR heck to 30 minutes as opposed to right now it's 6 hours. Yeah, let me do that. I'll work with whoever you want me to get that to get that done.
You brought another point that I want to go a little bit deeper. Uh, the old days before cloud became a thing, they were silos. They were, and they won't talk to each other, and it was friction point. We have gone past that, but we still, I call them soft silos because the expertise will, you cannot expect a network engineer to be well versed in security. But the thing is, teams are coming together, but they're not coming together because that's how the organization want them. Some of these practices, some of these tools, like things like chaos engineering, it forces the teams to come together. So can you also talk about, have you seen the way observability whole practice works? It forces teams to come together.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think there's two kind of things driving that. I think one is organizations and the individuals in organizations are looking to unify their data architectures, right? And that's exactly what you were saying, right? It's not silos. It's the idea that, well, heck, if I have a tool that can work across all of my logs, for example, whether they're structured or unstructured, why wouldn't I do that? Why, that it kind of seems obvious, but there's a lot of legacy thought there that says, as you said, silos. And then I think the other part of it is embracing the AI monitoring and response. I think that's kind of we've all become more comfortable with it, right? We all use it for something, in our jobs. And I think the DevOps, SecOps, engineering teams are now realizing, it's not going to replace me as an individual, but it's going to allow me to, I call it struggle work. And I know folks in the industry call it struggle work as well, right? It's going to allow me to work on those things that I really need to use my brain for. And I can automate some of those other things. And if you have access to all of the resources and the data and can use detection as code and AI to help you do some of the, I don't want to say busy work, but I'm going to say busy work. And you can focus on the stuff that the human brain is really good at. We're in a great spot, right?
If you look at today's, tool sprawl is there with so many tools in today's observability stack. How do you see the role of uh, log data evolving along, right? As you mentioned, matrices, traces. Uh, are logs still the ultimate source of truth?
I think so. I mean, if as I mentioned, right, you can get some valuable data out of metrics and traces, but it's a what and it's a moment in time. Logs give you everything that you could use, but you need a tool to be able to analyze them. And the example I always give is, we've talked about unstructured logs here, but we haven't really said, what they were. So I in my view and what I've seen is, I like simple things, right? So I'm just going to oversimplify it. Structured logs, think about structured logs as something that fits neatly into a row or a column. So think of a Google Sheet or an Excel column or row. One of those cells, that's structured data. Fits nice and neat in there. I always use the example of a zip code. Perfect, right? Unstructured, you know, by definition, you know, and we've all seen it. We've all gone to some app and you get that error message that splashes by. That's a bunch of hex code and funky characters, and it's about 4 lines long. And maybe you see the word username in there or something you recognize, but everything else is, you know, I call it gobbledygook, right? You don't know what it is. So to get back to your question, I think if that's what's being produced, and I mentioned standards and kind of the context of logs, and it's valuable data, it'll tell you what happened, how to, in some cases will lead you on how to go fix it, where to go, focus, and then you can scale and turn that into an automated response. I guess my perspective is, why wouldn't you do that? If you've got the tool to do it, why wouldn't you? Right? Because it comes back to the scale issue. If you see that happen on one server, for example, wouldn't it be nice to know whether that's an impact today or that's a next month problem? And logs can help lead you to that answer.
And how does Sumo Logic help teams connect all these unstructured log data with structured sources to improve things like cause analysis, or some of the things that you mentioned?
Sumo Logic can handle both structured and unstructured logs. So that's to us, it's all the same. We can ingest those, we can analyze them, and we can report back to them for organization for both security and other data. So all application infrastructure observability data. So that's really one of our big differentiators in the market.
Are there certain industries or use cases like security, compliance? Of course, this whole geopolitical crisis is going on, where unstructured data can play or is playing even more important role.
I mean, across our customer base, excuse me, all vertical markets, we see it all the time. And again, it goes back to one of the very first things I said, that lack of standards. So, you know, we will find unstructured logs in every vertical and every use case because, you know, sometimes it's an easier out for a vendor to not structure the data and have to put a schema on it and leave it unstructured. But to give you a real world example, you know, I always use a retail example, and in something like, you know, a Black Friday or a Christmas time or holidays time, you know, for buying, you know, when the load for purchasing and viewing becomes very high, right? One of the things that organizations and SREs need to kind of think about is planning for that and getting ahead of any issues that are happening uh, or to happen. And the only way you can predict that is going back and looking at some of the previous incidents and previous log data, right? From maybe previous bursty periods. And if you're only looking at the structured parts of that, but you know that your infrastructure stack that handles your e-commerce has both structured and unstructured data in it, you're looking at a percentage. So you're predicting a percentage of your uptime during the busiest time of your year. That's not. I don't want to be the one standing in front of the CEO explaining to him that, yeah, we knew this was a possibility, but you know, we used 30% of the data because that's what we had.
True, and that also leads to another question: is that as teams are relying more and more on AI for log analysis, are there any risk or limitations they should keep in mind, so that once again, it's not like you ask and they're like, I don't know, I just use, I don't want to name any specific,
Yeah,
AI.
yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah.
so talk
No.
about that.
Well,
Yeah.
so again, going back to like the work, busy work, struggle work, whatever you want to call it. I think organizations have to determine, you know, is if we're using AI, is there always a human in the middle to validate? And I think that is the case today and is going to continue to be the case. You know, a lot of organizations are using multiple LLMs to validate, so have them kind of bounce off of each other findings to kind of narrow down, like, okay, cool, we can use 6 LLMs and get to something we feel very good about. But I think there's got to be a human, especially for, if you're doing incident response and you want to automate repairs, right? I think there's got to be a human who at some point puts the thumbs up on it and says, yes, that's going to work.
What advice you have for DevOps and SRE leaders who are looking to improve their observability posture? What should they prioritize when it comes to rethinking their data strategy? And at what point they should reach out to Sumo Logic?
Well, you should reach out to Sumo today. Come on. But no, I think as I've kind of highlighted here, take a step back and take a critical look at if you are doing justice to your data. And by that I mean, are you reporting up that you're looking at 100% of the data that's available to you? Now, I understand budget constraints and tool sprawl and all of those things, but if you have the opportunity to kind of take that step back and look at your infrastructure and say, have those what if conversations inside. Hey, we had an incident last year. It cost us $4 million. What if we did this, this, and this, and we were able to predict that that incident was going to happen? What I always say is good ideas get funded. So I think it's an opportunity for SRE teams to kind of come up with that good idea, and that good idea, should and could be using all structured and unstructured data, and then put that proposal together and go get funding for it and do it.
Bill, thanks for great insight. It's clear that unstructured data is no longer something teams can afford to ignore, and Sumo Logic is here to help them. Thanks for great insights, and I look forward to chat with you again. Thank you.
Anytime. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.